Right. So you said 200 you have free allocation. So that is for a month.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So this is 137 per month. You have not used for any other VMs, right?
I use Linux Red Hat
Is
VM, but
that free?
it's charged for 1 hour.
There's a charge for 1 hour. What is the charge?
I think dollar.
Small amount.
No, another $1.
Ah, okay, okay, okay. Right, so this is $137 per month. Okay. So I think better to have 8 gigabit memory at least. Ah, okay, there is 7 gigabit memory, 183. Okay, we will use the recommended one. Okay, so here you have to type username and password. Must not include reserved words. Okay. That is also reserved word. Okay, Daniel, I will use your name. Right, so this should be between 12 and 123 characters. Right, so Daniel, when you created, did you, I think, so RDP is automatically, the rule is here, right, to enable it from the firewall. Yeah, we don't need the other. Okay, we will use SSD. Locally redundant. So some redundancy there is there in the server, right? Right. Then encryption. So we will keep the default encryption. So in the hard disk, all the data will be encrypted, right? Right. So here, if you want to add any additional disk, you can add. So we will keep it as it is. So we will have the basic security group, and we will allow this. And we will have this Windows update option automatically enabled. Right, so we can move on to the next. Yeah, so we will have basic generation 1. So generation 2, it says it's UEFI based, so that will be bit complex, so we will keep it simple. Right, so these are the options that we selected. Subscription, then a group to keep the virtual machine, then the name, yeah, and these options, right? The username, the premium SSD, manage this, right? So yeah, this is the subnet, and this is the public IP. Okay, so let's create. So Tenil, is this how you did when you created the virtual machine?
මාත් කොහොමද ඒක
හරි.
ඔතන අර තාම ක්‍රියේට් වෙනවා ක්‍රියේට් වෙන දාස් ඔතන අර ලොග් වෙන්න තියෙන ඩීටේල්ස් ඔක්කොම වැටෙනවා.
හරි. කොච්චර විතර වෙලා යනවද?
ඕකස විනාඩි 3ක් විතර ගියේ.
විනාඩි 3ක් හැදෙනවානේ. okay. තාම ඉවර නෑනේ, තාම යනවා. Yeah, so this is, I think, okay.
go resource කියන තැනට ගියා ඇතුළට යනවා.
හරි. අපි පස්සේ මේක කරමු. හරි. එතකොට remote desktop කරන්න හැදුවේ මොකෙන්ද? මේකෙන්ද?
ඔව් සර්. ඔතනින් මේ මම try කරා ඊට පස්සේ මේ ඔතනින් ඊට පස්සේ ආපු නැතිනම් ඔතන අර දකුණු පැත්තේ තියෙන networking යට connect කියලා එක. ඔය connect කියන එකේ RDP use කරලා connect වෙන වෙලාව automatically file එක download වෙලා remote desktop එක on වෙනවා.
කොතනද තියෙන්නේ?
සර් ඔය වම් පැත්තේ තියෙන tab menu bar
හරි.
එකේ උතන download RDP file කියන එක ගිහිල්ලා
ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා තමයි.
Linux එකට log වෙන්න පුළුවන් සර්. Linux එකට මම SS කරලා log වුණේ මේ putty use කරලා.
So inbound එක මේ අතන SSH TC කියන RDP
ඔව් SSH නේද තියෙන්නේ. SSH මම enable කරේ නෑ, මේක වැඩ කරන්න බෑ. सर्वर එක ක්‍රියේට් කරපු ගමන්ම රිමෝට් ඩෙස්ක්ටොප් කරන්නද try කරේ?
also login විදියක් නැහැ.
Okay, while that is happening, let me. Okay, it fails. Right. So let me show you again about the installation steps. So here in this VM, actually, it's automatically being installed for us. We don't have to install, right? So, but yeah, if you are using a cloud server, then you don't have to install, but sometimes you might need to install from the beginning or from scratch, right? So then you should know how to install, what are the options. So there are virtual images which you can download, and so you don't have to install. The basic installation has been done, but you should know how to install, right? Because let's say you are asked to install, then you cannot take already available image, right? Because the versions may be different, the license. So you need to know. Yeah, so doing a clean installation, that means format the hard disk and install. So if you have installed Windows 10, then it's similar. You get this kind of interface, right? The language and things like that, keyboard format. Here, usually you have to select the second option, right? Install Windows only. And this will be used for clean installations, right? So usually we are not upgrading because that is not recommended. So then you will have to create some partitions in your disk, right? So this what is shown here, it doesn't have any partitions, right? It's a new disk. So yeah, so I think by the size it should be an SSD one, right? Yeah, then you get this at the end of the setup, right? So you get this, then yeah, then you get the install now. So then it says setup is starting. Then you'll be asked for the key, right? Then you'll be asked to select the version. So here there are two options. One is just the core installation without graphical, right? The text environment, and then the other is the GUI. So if you are installing the graphical environment, we have to select GUI. Right, then license. So you have to tick this I accept license, right? Then usually we are going for the second option, which is clean installation, install from the beginning, right? Right, then yeah, you can create partitions, or if you try to create, yeah. So if you try to create one partition, so some other partitions will be automatically created by this Windows setup, right? because they are required, right? So you don't actually have to create this system reserved partition. It will be automatically created when you are so the previous slide I show you, you have unallocated disk if it is a new disk, right, without partitions. So if you try to create one partition for the whole disk, so this will automatically create, the other required partitions which are required, right? You don't have to actually uh, create these, right? These will automatically be created, and then you will have a partition to install the operating system, right? So you have to select that, right? So then it will start installing. So yeah, so you will have to wait until all these steps are done, right? First, yeah, copying Windows files means copying the files from the CD or USB drive to the hard disk, right? Then from the hard disk, installation will happen, right? Then yes, it will install features and then the updates, right? If the server is already connected to the internet, it might update from the setup here, right? It will download the updates, Windows updates, right, from the Windows servers. Then it will after updating, so then it will be done, right? Then it will restart, and then you get the login page. Yeah, so you use the username and password and login. So if you are installing only the core version without graphical, so you will have a command prompt, right? So you can type any commands here, right? So there are some commands which you can type to uh, the same things which you do in the graphical using the menus, you can use commands, right? So you have to know the commands. Like here, install Windows feature means installing additional Windows features, right? So you can have a list of the features available. Then if you type like this, yeah, so in the install Windows feature, then Hyper-V, right? We want to install Hyper-V functionality in this server, right? So this is the server code. That is why we are typing the commands. So this function will be installed. So everything has to be done in the command line if you are installing the core version, right? Yeah, so it will show like this, starting installation. Yeah, so after it is done, so it says you must restart this server to finish the installation. Right, so those are the installation steps of Windows Server. Okay, then let me show you again. Right, so in the server manager, so you have to use this add roles and features. When you log in, this server manager will open. So if it is not there, you have to open server manager, right? Okay, then you go to add roles and features. So if you want to remove any role, you click this link, or you just press next. So then you need to, so we need the role-based installation. Right. Then you select the server. Then you select the. So you should select. Yeah, it's already installed. Active domain services, right? So after that, you get this step, the functional level. So you have to select the forest function level, domain function level, right? Then so DNS server functionality, global catalog. So global catalog is by default selected because it is mandatory, right? It is needed. So I hope you remember what I told last week about this. Right. So then it will check all the if there are any problems. So it will check and it will give you a result, right? So here it's a green tick, so everything is okay. We can install. Yes. So then if you are adding a so the very first domain server installation, you are using add a new forest, right? You have to create a forest and a domain. Then if you are adding additional controller to the same domain, then you select the first option, add a domain controller to an existing domain. So if you are creating a domain controller for a new domain in the same forest, so then you use the second option, add new domain to an existing forest. So the domain will be under the forest, but it will be a separate domain. Then, so this is the Active Directory, right? So where you manage, right? So yeah, those are the basic steps. Right, that virtual server, you'll have to try and create again and see what the issue is. Daniel, you can try to create one again and see what the issue is. I am actually also not sure why it is not working because the username and password I used, it doesn't work. Um, yeah, maybe some configuration needs to be done.
සර් මේ SSH එකේ මේ CLI එකට log වෙන්න try කරලා
Oh, SSH මුලදී දාන්න ඕන අතන ෆයර්වෝල් එක නැත්නම් වෙනම රූල් එකක් දාන්න පුළුවන්. මං හිතන්නේ මුලදිම ඒක දැම්මම නම් ලේසි වැඩේ. මුල රූල්ස් වල මං RDP එක විතරයි enable කරේ. SSH රූල් එකකුත් දාන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම වුණොත් ෆයර්වෝල් එක enable කරන්න.
ඕකේ
අතන මං හිතන්නේ වෙනස් කරන්න ගියොත් මෙතන කොහේ තිබ්බා මට මතක නෑ.
සර් ඕකෙන් පුළුවන් නේද මැෂින් 15ක් විතර ඒ කියන්නේ අපි log වෙන්න පුළුවන් වුණා මැෂින් 15ක් විතර හදලා මේ active directory එක දාලා බලන්න.
ඔව් machine 15ක් විතර හදලා කියන්නේ මේ client
ඔව් සර්.
ඔව් මේකේ අර licensing හරි cost එක බලලා තමයි කරන්න වෙන්නේ නේද?
ඕකේ සර් මේ අර ස්ටුඩන්ට් හින්දා මේ හදන්න පුළුවන්.
හරි. ඔව් එහෙමනම් මේ මෙතන ඔක්කොම fail to reset password කියලා තියෙනවා.
ඕකේ සර් මම අර හදලා තියෙන Linux machine එකට log වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මේක Windows එකට තමයි බැරි. ඒක මම
මොකක් හරි ඒක වෙන්න විදියක් නැහැ. හරි. මම රූල් එක දැම්මා SSH. You can try and see. So this is The password I put is this side. T and S capital. The other one is numbers.
Sir, we can't see screen.
Yeah. Right. So this is the password I put for the server. So Tenil, you can check and see SSH and see if it works. I put a rule also. Okay, you noted the password, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, so here, yeah, can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here I added a new firewall rule and I enabled SSH port, right? So you should be able to connect, but the server, okay, the SSH server should be running in the server also. So just check and see if this works.
Sir, putty වලින් පුළුවන් නේද? නැත්නම් Linux machine විතරද putty වල use කරන්නේ?
පුළුවන් පුටි වලින් පුළුවන්. මං පුටි තියෙනවද දන්නේ හිතන්නේ මං ගාව තිබුණා. Um, yeah, let me see. I think I should have that. Okay, seems I don't have it. Yeah, so to log in, you can use Putty as the SSH client to log in through Telnet. Sorry, SSH.
So username එකේ password එකේ පොඩක් දාන්න පුළුවන්.
Username එක Tenil, password
chat එකට පොඩ්ඩක්.
IP එක
පොඩ්ඩක් ඉන්න.
password තලේ සුවයි connect වෙනවා.
And this is the IP.
password එක Tenil server 2012 sir.
Yes. වැඩ කරන්නේ නැද්ද?
නෑ sir.
Error.
connect authentication right.
Username password issue එකක්ද පුටි එකට connect වෙනවද?
නෑ මම සර් මේ රමීනා වලින් ඉන්නේ Linux.
මේ SSH එකට connect වෙනවද? username මේ password එක ඉල්ලනවද?
SSH එක පොඩ්ඩක්.
Okay, give me a minute.
SSH එකට connect වෙන්න SSH session එකක් නෑ වගේ. Tenil.
Okay, shall we take a break? Tenil, you can check if the SSH thing
Okay.
is working.
Okay.
Tenil මේ වාට share ගන්න පුළුවන් screen එක. නැත්නම් මේ share මේක මම පොඩ්ඩක් access කරන්න.
මොකේ ස්ක්‍රීන් එකද?
සර්ගේ නෙමෙයි සර්ගෙන් රිමෝට් රික්වෙස්ට් කරන්න
might have to
SSH වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
ඒක තමයි නේද password එකේ මොකක් හරි but there were no errors in the password they said like 12 characters and the rules are okay there should be a mix of capital simple then numbers so otherwise they will give an error so um
SSH
I'm not
පෙන්වන්නේ මේ සර්වර් එක ඒ කියන්නේ ඔන් වෙලා නැහැ කියලා පෙන්වන්නේ. connection output.
ඒ කියන්නේ the SSH that service is not running maybe yeah that is what I said when I started created the new Windows version I didn't select the SSH port right so maybe it is not running in the server so then I think best thing is to create a new one and if you select all those there were some options RDB was the default they have enabled right that is why this rule is there there were some other options SSH and I can't remember there were I think 3 other options right just enable all of them and so that will automatically create a rule firewall rule here and also I think the service will be started in the server without the service you cannot log in right now this RDP also so we are using a RDP client from our side but in the server the RDB server should be running and allowed all right yeah so inbound port rules yeah so SSH we are trying to log into the server means inbound traffic so this should work but if the service is not running then we cannot connect via SSH right so I think when creating if we selected the option those yeah the thing is here they are installing the OS and yeah the only way for us to connect is through remote login that's the issue
ඒක අපි 2016 සර්වර් එකක් දාලා අපිට මේ ප්‍රැක්ටිස්
oh ඒ issue එකක් නෑ try and see පොඩි කියන්නේ there should be some differences but yeah so basically there will be more features and the graphical thing will be different but basically same things will be there so you can try 2016 and see I don't know why this 2012 also should work yeah so to find the problem it will take time it takes time that's the issue yeah there's a connection troubleshoot also yes I can't even reset the password so I don't know what the issue right so you can either create a new one server 2012 or create 2016 one and see if that works right this should be able to fix using their tools I can't even reset their password so that's a very simple thing I don't know what is the issue okay so SSH it says network connectivity allowed
අපේ Windows command line එකෙන් SSH කරන්න පුළුවන් නේ මම මේ දැන් කරලා බලුවා අර Linux එකට SSH
command line එකෙන් in from Linux
නේද මම මේ Windows මේ අපේ CMD එකෙන් Linux machine එකට SSH කරා වැඩ කරනවා
කොහොම මොකද command එක
SSH කරලා SSH කියලා ගහලා ස්පේස් එකක් තියලා username at IP එක සෙට මම IP එක ගන්නවා
ඒ කියන්නේ SSH client එකක් SSH client එකක් Windows එකේ තියෙනවානේ right yeah then I don't have to yeah so yeah Windows 10 it already has an SSH client installed, so you don't actually have to install any other software. You can directly, yeah. So let's see. Right, let's try to connect to this IP. So this server is what? Linux server?
Yes, sir. It is a Red Hat.
Red Hat. So this works.
Yes, sir. Passwords, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 only.
Ah, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. So just by typing SSH, yeah, so just typing SSH to that IP, it gives some feedback, but the okay, give me a minute. Yeah, okay, so yeah, actually SSH to the server that I created, actually there's nothing happening. So there should be a problem there.
So username එක Penillat කියලා දාලා IP.
Yeah, the thing is, even without the username, see your thing, it gave me a reply, right? So here there is nothing. Okay, let's put the username and see.
සර් ඒක simple T use කරේ.
Yeah, I think simple or capital, it's not an issue in Windows. Yeah, so yeah, you can try creating a new server or creating a 2016 and see whether that is working. Right. So we started about group policy, right? So, you know, when it comes to this domain servers, so mainly you have to manage the Active Directory and group policy, right? Then audit and those things are also there. Select this domain. So this is how you specify actually the location, right? So here we are actually applying to the students organizational unit. So this is how you actually mention or the path, right? So OU students, then DC is the name of the domain controller, right? Why is there? So Unitech dot, it should be local, right? So like if you select, one of these sub OUs, yeah, you see, so this is the path, right? So OU first, you specify the sub OU, right? Then you specify the parent OUs in order, right? So here it's only 2 levels. So you have the student as the parent in the domain. Then you have the 19 OU, right? So you start from the 19, then you go up one by one. So this is how you specify the path of your OU, right? So if you go sub levels more than this, then you will actually have all those. Right now, if we take here B1, yeah, so you will see all those levels. So first you specify B1, then net, then 19, then students, then the domain controller. So especially when you are using configuration files or scripts, right? So this is how you actually specify the path of your OU, right? So this is how you specify the path of your OU. Yeah, just like, a folder path. So a folder path you will have, slash, so something like this. So if you are inside the system32 folder, then you have to, provide the path like this, right? Which including the, parent folders and so on. So here also OU, if you are going sub levels like this or sub OUs, then this is actually how you specify. You go backwards, right? Starting from the current where you are, right? Then you go one by one to the parent levels, and then so this is how you actually specify the location of your path of your OU, right? So not like the folder path, it's the other way, right? It's like backwards. So you will be needing to provide a path like this when, especially when you are using the command line, right? Or you are using some configuration files to automate, right? So these things can be automated. Yeah, so you see, you can, without, if you don't have that much of knowledge, advanced knowledge in, creating these group policy objects and so on, you can use this wizard to select the best options, according to the requirement, right? Yeah, see here, so you can select if it is a slow network connection, right? Or loopback processing is there. Yeah, here, yeah. So to which groups you are going to actually apply this group policy, right? So you can select them here. So authentication users, authenticated users is normal, the standard users that you create, right? Limited users. So everyone, if everyone is there, then it will go to the everyone group, which will include every user, right? Right. So this is user security group, then computer security groups. Then, yeah, if you want, you can add. So this WMI filters that is for advanced customization, right? So these are actually used to monitor the servers, right? Yeah, then it gives a summary. Then Okay, so I have created a group policy modeling on this OU, right? So that is for used for group policy modeling. So if you just want to create a group policy object, then here is where you create it, right? So previously I have created, like this. Okay, so yeah, using group policies, you can, give the, necessary permission for the relevant people, so that they can only do what they're supposed to do, right? So give only access as needed by the users, right? So yeah, so there can be many types of access that we can give. Yeah, so these are the benefits of having group policy. So users can access their files even if the network is, let's say the network connection is dropping, right? Sometimes going offline, and or maybe due to heavy traffic, right? Now, if you have group policy for offline files, right? Offline files, that means whatever the files in the server, right? Your files in the server will be having a cached version on your computer, client computer, right? So it's like this. So you have the server, then you have the client machine. So your files are there in the server. So a copy of that will be stored in the client machine also, right? So this is your data in the server. Server, and this is the client, right? So data can have a cached copy, so that in case this link is not stable and frequently going down and up, right? Then if the link is not stable, actually you cannot access whatever the data in the server, right? Or any storage place. So if you have like a cached version offline, so you can work on that cached or copied version, right? So, but the changes to be applied to the server side, the connection should be there, right? But you can keep on working without any disturbance from the network connectivity issues, right? So that is called offline file. So there's a group policy especially for that. The thing is, if you are storing a cache offline like this, then whatever your data needs to be copied from the server, right? So let's say we put that rule. So every user who will be logging in with their client will be downloading a offline version of their files, right? So if there are a lot of files, and if let's say the size of the files is large, then that will build up traffic, a lot of traffic in the network, right? If the amount of data or the file size is not that big, then there's not much of an issue. But yeah, so the network, or so this is usually the local area network. So it should have some kind of speed if using this option, right? So maybe having 1 gig speed, then it will not affect the whole network. right? This offline file caching. Right. So yeah, users can work with consistent computing environment. So that means when you apply a group policy, then it's the same environment for the user. If the user logs in any computer, right? Same environment will be there. So whatever the features which are available, and if some are restricted, so the same environment will be there when the user logs into any computer in the network, right? So this, because the group policy which is assigned to that user will be automatically applied. Right. So user files directed to a server location can be backed up regularly. Yeah. So yeah, this is, so when the user files are in the server, so it can easily be backed up. Yeah, applications that become damaged can be reinstalled or maintained automatically. Yeah, so these are the group advantages of having group policy. So what are the administrative benefits? So these are for the actually users, right? The benefits for the users, normal users. So what are the benefits for the administrator? So there is a centrally in one place, the admin can control, right? All the user settings, application, desktop, everything. So I just showed you, right? Just add to the group, whatever the group policy. Okay. Right. Let me close some of my windows because I seem to have a lot of windows. Right. Okay. So here, I just put a group policy to the OU or group, right? Then it will automatically, I can give separate group policy to this B1 also, right? So I just give the policy to this OU, then whatever, the users inside will automatically inherit those group policies, right? So that is how it works. So, as admin, it's very easy for me. So let's say B1, I can put a group policy, and, let's say I need to share some, common folder only with B1 students, right? So I can put a group policy for that, so that they will see that common folder when they log in to a client computer, right? So then only those people will be, so the B1, right? Only those students will see that folder, and only they can access and write and read and write to that folder, right? Other students cannot, and they don't get that folder also, right? So I can create a group policy for that purpose, right? So let's say the lecturer wants to share some material with only B1 students in the labs, right? So then, so as admin, I can give access to the lecturer, right? To that common shared folder. So the lecturer can, put some files there. Then the students can log in and access, right? So I can give access like this also. The students can only read or copy whatever the files from that folder. They cannot write, right? So the lecturers, they have been given permission to write to that folder, right? So when sharing files, that method is better. Then let's say the lecturer puts some files in that common folder, right? So if the students also has write permission, then they might delete, or if you cut and paste also, then those files will be gone, right? So that's a problem. So then I can give students only read-only access to that folder, right? Then the lecturer can write anything or copy anything to that folder, right? Save anything to that folder, then and the students can read and copy, right? But they cannot delete or change anything. So yeah, that is the best method to have. If let's say the lecturers need to share some files with the students. So that is just one example of where we can use a group policy, right? So actually the permission part, we have to separately do it, right? So using group policy, the folder will be shared with all the required users, but by using permissions, we can allow certain people to read write access, and certain people only read access, right? Like students only read access, and the lecturers or staff, we can give read write both. Okay, is that okay? Did you understand about that example that I just told you about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so yeah, then problems due to missing application files and other, yeah, by automation of application repairs. Yeah, so there are some group policies which we can repair applications which are not working due to some reason. Okay, then centralized administration of user files eliminates the need and cost trying to recover from a damaged drive. Yeah, so a group policy. So then the files of the users will be in the server, so centralized, right? So you can give permission or whatever to the folders, and then you can have backups, right, centrally. So yeah, so it removes the cost of trying to recover files from a damaged drive. Yeah, so since you are having all the files centrally, you can have backup, and if something happens to the original one, you can recover from the backup. So actually if the files are not centralized, and maybe the students have their files in the computers itself, right, not centrally, right, in the computers, then it's difficult to back up all the files from all the computers in the network, right? So there will be a cost involved. You will have to have some kind of tool then. Yeah, so it's very easy to have the files and storage centrally, right? Especially easy to manage. Right, the need to manually make security changes reduce. Yeah, so you don't have to give manual permissions to the users, right? So when you're using group policy, you can just directly give to the group the policies whatever needed, and then automatically it will apply to the users which are there in that group. GPOs are what I showed you earlier, object. So I told you about objects. So this is a group of, yeah, so it's saying you have selected a link to a group object. Yeah. So yeah, so this is the GPO. Actually, it's a shortcut to the GPO, right? So yeah, even if you delete it from here, actually you will be deleting the shortcut, right? Not the real one. So yeah, here if you go to this group policy objects folder, now here are the actual GPU objects, right? Student S1 lab. So if you just go to this group policy objects, then you will see all the group policy objects which are available, right? Now here are actually the links, a link like a shortcut. See, to this student GPU, there is a shortcut here. So deleting that shortcut will not delete this. It's just a shortcut there, right? Yeah. So you see, when you delete it, it will ask you, do you want to delete this link? This will not delete the GPU itself. So, you know, anytime you want to remove that group policy from that group or you can just delete it. It will actually delete only the link, right? The GPUs will be there in the original location, which is here. So, you know, when you remove group policies from the groups, so you just delete the link actually, not the actual GPU. So if you want to later use that GPU at later time, then you can use it, right? Because it's not deleted. Yeah, right. So yeah, so next time we will do no, I think you have an idea about installing the server, Windows server, how to install the setup and everything. You have an idea now, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So next time we will have an assignment from that, right? How to install. So just come ready and so you know what are the steps involved in installing and right. So I showed you today also some steps, right? So just come prepared next time. We will have an online assessment of that. Right. So yeah, let's go back to the slide. Right, this GPO. So I just showed you. So we can create many of these group policy objects, right? For separate maybe OUs or groups or whatever, right? Or sub OUs. Then we can reuse them, right? The objects. So let's say we have already created some GPOs, right? Like here. Now this S1 lab I have created. Let's say now, okay, we are now putting up a new lab, new OU, right? So this S1 lab group policy GPO is already applied. Okay, now let's say I want to use the same S1 lab GPU to this lab also. So inside this OU, there will be the computers, right? So which I have added in the Active Directory. So if I want this same group policy to be applied to this lab, sorry, it should be yeah, when you naming, you have to name it properly so that you can properly identify. Right. So in this OU organization unit, you will have the computers of the new lab. Now, if I want to apply the same group policy to this, right? Now I have the group policy already here, right? Group policy object GPO. So I don't actually have to create. I don't need to create another one if I am using the same group policy settings. So then I don't go to create a GPO. I will go to link an existing GPO. Right. It will list the whatever the available. Then I select S1 lab. Okay. Right. So because now this S1 lab is actually OU which is there in the Active Directory root, right? So there's no parent for that, right? So S2 lab is a separate one. So now earlier I had only linked this S1 lab group policy to S1 lab OU, right? So if I create a new one S2, right? So outside the root, this will not actually apply here, right? So the very first time I create, this will only have the default domain policy, right? Then if I want to apply the same rules, I can, so like that, right click, then link an existing GPU, then select S1 lab GPU, right? So we can use like this if, these two labs should have the same kind of security or configurations, group policy configurations, right? So let's say later, okay, I want to change some settings only in GPU settings, only in S2 lab, right? In that case, I should not change this, right? Because if I change the settings in this, it will apply to lab 1 also. So what I should do in that case is, then I will have to go to create a new GPU, right? Named S2, and then I can give whatever the policies, right? Which is to be applied only to S2 lab. Or let's say we are having kind of a policy, right? Maybe IT policy saying that, okay, in every lab, the group policies or the security or whatever, it should be the same, right? If we have some kind of rule like that, then we can do something like this. Then easiest thing to do is create a new OU. We can have something like this, labs. Right? Yeah, so then we can move this. Right, so actually you cannot Yeah, you cannot move an OU after you created it. Right. So what you should do is you can create like this. Then yeah, in the Active Directory you have to actually move, you know, whatever the compute objects which are here in this OU to these two OUs, right? Then you can link S1 lab to this. So it will actually apply to all the sub OUs which are under this labs, right? So then you don't have to worry. Now any new lab you create under this labs OU, right? And when you add the compute objects to that OU, the group policy will be automatically applied to all the labs. So you see now same policy will be assigned to all the labs, and yeah, so you have to create like this if there is a policy saying that all labs should have the same, you know, group policy or configuration, right? So if there's a kind of a policy, then you can create like that. So that will be easier to manage. So, you know, you can change like that according to the requirement, right? Let's say you have the policy to have the same configuration in all labs, right? Then some years later, that decision was changed, right? Okay, so we have decided to, you know, have separate, let's say, policies to each lab. So in that case, you can keep this OU hierarchy as it is, right? You don't have to actually separate like this. You can keep it like this, and then, you know, so here, if you are linking OU for the labs OU, sorry, if you are linking a group or GPO for the labs OU, then you have to actually put here the whatever the common features only, right? Common features or group policies which will be there for all the labs, right? So then you can maybe, you know, yeah, remove this here from here, then create a new GPO, right, with common settings which are related to all labs. Then to each of these labs, yeah, so I'm linking an existing because it's already there. So this maybe, you know, I can create a new GPO. So I can name that as is to lab. So that will be a new GPO. So if you check the group policy objects now you have a new one, S2 lab, right? Currently I have not changed any or put any configuration in S2 lab. So I have to include anything which should be there. So these are now actually not needed. Yeah, when you are deleting the OUs, right? So I am deleting because I moved these, whatever the objects which were inside to these, right? So without moving, you should not delete. Say it gives a warning. Do you want to delete this unit? This will also delete all child objects under the organization unit. So can you see it's very dangerous? It's like deleting folders, right? When you delete a folder, every file inside the folder will delete. So here also same thing. If you delete an OU, it will delete all the child objects which are inside, right? So for example, like if you so currently actually okay, not rename. Right, okay. So I think that is when I created the OUs, the checkbox prevent accidental deletion was there, right? So that is why this access denied is coming. Right, so that's some kind of additional security so that you don't accidentally delete OUs, right? So let's say you accidentally deleted the student OU, everything will be gone if you do that, right? Because all the students will be inside this, right? So inside all these sub OUs. So if you delete something like that, then everything will be deleted, right? So actually, because this has some kind of security so that accidentally deletion is prevented. Right. So that is download server image. Yeah, I think doing in a virtual server will be difficult for you all, right? That would be better, but so we will do like this. Like we can have the steps which need to be there when we are installing Windows Server, right? So so you can use some images from the internet if you want, no issue. We will do like this now. I think installing in a virtual server, since most of you have limit like 4 GB RAM, that's an issue, right? But so how is it? Are you able to use a virtual machine and to install? Is that possible to all of you?
So ඒ කියන්නේ මේ අපි මේ live server එක install කරන විදිය සයට පෙන්නන ඕනේ
ඕන පෙන්නන්න ඒකත් පොඩ්ඩක් අමාරුයි නේද මේ මොකද වීඩියෝ එක දාලා මේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඉන්ස්ටෝල් කරන ගමන් කරන්න ගියොත් අමාරුයි නේද මට නිකන් ස්ක්‍රීන්ෂොට් වගේ ඒ වගේ තිබ්බත් ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ ඉන්ස්ටෝල් කරන්න පුළුවන්ද
live install කරද්දී stuck වෙද්දී ඉතින් presentation එකට image දාලා
ඔව් ඒක තමයි එහෙම මං හිතන්නේ එහෙම කරා නම් වැඩිය හොඳයි කොහොමටත් ඔන්ලයින් එකේ Zoom එකේ කරන්න අමාරුයි මොකද ඔය වීඩියෝ දාලා ලෝඩ් එකත් වැඩි virtual server එකක install කරලා ඕක කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් හරි screenshot වගේ අරගෙන එහෙම කරා නම් හරි.
So එහෙනම් අපි මේ presentation එකක් විදියට කරන්නේ PowerPoint slide එක.
ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් එකක් නේද? ඔව් එහෙම කරමු. ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් එකක් විදියට කරමු.
Okay sir.
Yeah, so then yeah, create a presentation of the steps that you need to do to install a Windows server, right, in the computer. So you can include what are the if you are installing in a virtual server, you can take some screenshot and then you can include that in your presentation. So even I showed you some screenshots when you are installing, right? So those steps should be there. So this is to make sure that you have a good understanding of putting up a Windows server, right? So you should have the knowledge of installing Windows server. So I think since you are familiar with virtual machine, you have installed other Linux or Windows or whatever, right? So yeah, so that knowledge is there. So server, how to install, right, from the beginning, what are the options there? Then if yeah, you can mention as you like, right? So I showed you, right, some of if you want to go for the graphical, or you can mention those options there. So right, so then yeah, so we will have another assignment of configuring the Active Directory and so on. So first we will do this installation, right? So yeah, be prepared for it the next day, right?
So ඒ කියන්නේ ඊළඟ දවස් මේ assignment එක දීලා ඊට පස්සේ දවසේද?
ඊළඟ දවසේ තමයි අපි දැන් ඉන්ස්ටලේෂන් එක කරන්නේ. ඔයගොල්ලෝ එකට රෙඩි වෙලා ඉන්න.
Okay sir. Active Directory එක කරන්නේ ඊට පස්සේ සතියේද?
ඊට පස්සේ අපි කරමු.
හරි sir.
Okay, so right, so I showed you about group policy objects, how to link, and yeah, so to deploy GPU, administrator must associated with the container. So that is what I did, linking. So to actually, now you can create group policy objects in the server, or yeah, in the server, right? But you have to actually link those group policies to an OU, right? And an administrator must associate it with the container. So yeah, OU or group. So basically in group policy management, you see the OUs there, right? I don't think you will see groups in the group policy editor. Now if I click okay, yeah, see all the, so these are all OUs. Let me let's see if I create, yeah, so actually you will see here the OUs that you have created in the Active Directory, right? So yeah, so domain controllers, yeah, it's also there. So actually if you are planning to have group policy, then you should have the necessary OUs created here. Yeah, these are different kinds of things. Security groups. It's just a security group. Okay, so basically when you are setting up a domain or domain controller, right? Then Active Directory, right? So you have to put up or you have to create actually OUs to separate maybe the departments, or in this case now. So let's say I'm creating this domain controller for the university, right? For the students logins basically. Yeah, I can even, yeah, so this is, since if we take this for, let's say, department, right? No, let's say that this is for the whole university, then I can have, so there is a OU for students, then I should have something for staff as well, right? So the staff user accounts will be created here. Yeah, right now here I can create new user, then I can create a staff user here, right? So then students will have different permissions and staff will have different permissions, right? Now this staff will come up in the group policy management. Now just right click and refresh. Right, so see, it's there. So yeah, as I mentioned, how you, yeah, so you can create separate group policy objects here, so for staff I can create, right? So you can create group policy objects directly here in this group policy objects, and then link them to the staff OU, or here you can directly create and link by doing like this. So doing this, it will see, create an object GPO here, and then put a link here, right? In one go. So that's the fastest method. Or if you have previously created some group policies here, you can later link them to any of the OUs here, right? So the staff, okay, if this is for the whole university, then the staff may be subcategorized into maybe the departments which might be there, right? So yeah, so we can have like that. IT department, then yeah, so there can be many, right? So I'm just this is an example, and how we create these subcategories depends on the structure of that organization, right? Or the requirements, right? So sometimes yeah, we might need to have these departments outside as parent OUs, and then inside we might have to have some subcategories of those departments also, right? If staff is not the only people who will not be in these departments, right? Then we will have to change this. So it depends on the requirement, right? So if it is a company, then yeah, we might have to put separate departments as OUs first, or the root level, and then inside those departments we might have to put what kind of staff they are working, right? Maybe sub departments or whatever. So this is anyway how you do it. So you can change this when the structure changes. You can change this, right? So all you need to do is just create the new structure by using OUs, and then so if you are changing the structure, then so inside this OU, right, this is the GPO, right? You have to actually use the Active Directory. So let's say there are users here. So if you are changing the structure, right? So if you want to put this finance to another OU, separate in a different kind of structure, then you have to move all these, the user objects or whatever the objects which are here, to that new OU, right? So just by moving, you will be changing whatever the group policies which apply, right? Now let's say you are using this structure, right? And then you have already applied some group policies. So if you are putting them to another OU, right? The objects, if you are moving those to another separate OU, then you have to make sure that whatever the group policy, that will be applied in the new OU also, right? So what I mean is this. Let's say I change the structure later. Now I want to move all these people or objects here to this one, right? So when I'm moving to the new one, okay, that the new, okay, it's there now, right? So if I'm moving the objects of this finance group to this one, then whatever the group policy which is applied here, I have to first make sure it applies to the new OU. So let's say I already have something like this. Now when I am moving the users which are inside this OU to this new OU here, right? Now this policy I have to first apply here, right? Before moving the users. If I don't apply the policy before moving the users, then they will have no policy, right? Which might be a security issue, because there definitely has to be some policy applied for the users. So if you move them to a OU which does not have any policies, then so they don't have those restrictions, right? And security wise, that is not good. So before moving, make sure to apply the group policy to that new OU also, right? So now you can move these objects to the new one, right? So, and the policy also will be automatically applied because it's there, right? Yeah. So you can move the objects here and there when you need to change the structure here, but you have to be careful to do it in the correct way, right? Okay, let's go back to the slide. So administrative tasks for group policy include creating group policy objects, which we did now. So when you just create one, it doesn't have any policy, right? You have to actually edit the policy and select whatever the required policies, right? Right, specifying where GPUs are stored and then managing the links. Right, so we have three types of group policy objects. One is the local GPOs, which apply to local compute only. Then we have the domain GPOs, which created in the active directory. So this is like the user accounts. I think I explained this earlier about local user accounts and domain user accounts. What is the difference? Right? Local user accounts are user accounts of the local computers where you log into the local computer and using the local resources. So domain user accounts are domain or active directory user accounts where those details are stored in the server, and then we will be accessing domain files or links, right? Then domain resources, we will be mainly accessing the domain resources or server resources, right? So same here, local group policy will actually apply to local users, right? Then domain group policy will apply to domain users. So when the users log in using a domain account to a client computer, right? They will get all the group policies which are there in the server. So this is, yeah, so this is basically the same like here, right? When you log in using a domain account, so you know all the group policies will come from the server. Yeah, this is actually domain GPU, right? So any local GPUs will be there inside the client, right? So if you have Windows Professional, I think you should be able to access this group policy management in your computers also. I think in home it's not available, I think. Let me see if I can show you. Yeah, so this is local group policy editor. So you have this in your computers also. I don't think you have this feature in the home version. I think it's disabled, right? So if you have in the Windows 10 professional versions, you should be able to access this. So this is local group policy. So almost the same things, you know, settings, group policy settings. Yeah, you can change here, right? see. So yeah, so this is local group policy. Then so domain group policy means group policy which we edit in the server, right? Right. Then we have starter group policy objects. So yeah, so those are template GPU based on a standard collection of settings. So starter GPUs are actually, there are templates, group policy templates, which are like, basic templates we can start to create group policies on. So they have the, basic settings of that template, right? Let's say a template for, it's like having like sample group policies applied, right, in that template. So we don't have to start from the beginning, right? So we have some settings which are already applied, so then we can change those if we want, and maybe we can add additional things, right? So group policy container, so this is, I showed you, right, contains all the group policy objects, and yeah, it might contain containers which hold the group policy information. So there are two GPOs which are default domain policy and default domain controller policy, right? So these are default domain policy means it applies to the whole domain, right? So maybe user, maybe computer, like that, the whole domain, right? Now this default domain controller policy is for the domain controllers which are added to the domain, right? So all of those have a similar kind of policy which will be allocated to those domain controllers, right? So each group policy container contains two subcontainers, one for computer and other for user configuration. So yeah, I showed you earlier, right? There are two types: computer configuration and user configuration. Yeah, so that comes when you edit. Okay, so you see it here: computer configuration and user configuration. So tell me, what are these two for? User configuration is for what? Yes, anyone? User configuration? That is for what?
Client machines.
Sorry?
Client machines.
No. User configuration, that is for the actually users, right? User logins. So for the client machines or client computers, the computer configuration will be applied, right? So yeah, so you need to know these things properly, right? This computer configuration applies to the computers and user configuration applies to the users, right? So now in this group policy, right? So okay, where's my, okay, right? You see here now, there are some OUs which contain computer objects. This S1 lab, that is so the lab, it contains computers, right? So that means that OU will contain computer objects. So the staff, student, right, or finance. So those actually include user objects, user accounts or objects, right? So for those OUs, right, when you apply group policies, you have to make sure to use the user configuration for staff, students, right? So if you computer configuration will not apply to users, that is a different set of security or rules, and user configuration is a different set of security or rules, right? So remember that when you assign group policy. Right, is that clear?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay, right. So yeah, so I think you understand this domain policy and domain controller, right? Domain is for the whole domain. So the domain has a domain controller, then domain clients, then various other devices and user accounts, computer accounts, everything, right? So this default domain policy applies to everything in the domain. So default domain controller policy applies only to domain controllers. So that is yeah, which are in this folder. That means this one. So every domain controller in the domain, so there will be a policy. Yeah, so can you see here? Default domain controller policy. So this will actually apply to all the domain controllers, right? Then default domain policy will apply to all, right? It will apply to domain controllers, then user accounts, then lab computer accounts and everything, right? So domain policy applies to everything. Domain controller policy will apply to only the domain controllers. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then computer configuration will be applied to computer objects. Then user configuration will be applied to normal user account object, right? Yeah. So if you open the Active Directory Administrative Center, so this is what you get. So let's open that and see. Yeah, let's okay. Yeah, so you have this administrative center. Right. So using this tool, yeah, we see the OUs groups and everything here. So this is the window. Yeah, so here also you can see what are the group policies which are there. Okay, so those are in system. See policies. Now these are the group policy objects which I have created. And some of the default ones also. Yeah, so actually the group policy, these only have some IDs. You can't actually see the name there. So use group policy editor to, it should be easy to using by using group policy editor to edit the group policies and everything, right? Right. So this group policy templates, that's a folder which is located in the sysvol folder on the domain controller, right? This sysvol, I think you remember when we are adding this as a domain controller, then it asks for the path, right? We are going to save. So the default path is, I think, in system, in C Windows. So this will contain all the policies which we have created. Yeah. So here, these are the actual files, policy files. Now, if these become corrupted for some reason, then we will have a problem with the policy. Yeah. So if you have like more than one domain server, then we can recover these. Otherwise, yeah, we will have to if one of these files got corrupted, then the policy is not there, right? Then it will not be applied to the users. So we have to quickly recover, and so that the policies can be applied to the users. So if you have properly set up the server with backup servers and so on, even if some files get corrupted, you can recover, right? So I think you should remember the things I have told you, right? There's a proper way to, when you add a backup domain controller, there are some proper steps that you need to follow, right? If you don't do those things, actually it's like අර නමට backup තියෙනවා වගේ තමයි, right? It's not actually a backup what you have configured if you have not properly done it. So when you create an additional or backup domain controller, it should be able to work on its own when the original or primary domain controller is down, right? So I think you remember, so I did some things or showed you some settings that need to be applied, right? So if you don't do those things, actually it will not work as a backup, right? Yeah, the copy might be there in the backup server, but in case the primary or the first domain control fails, the backup will not be able to function on its own if you have not properly done some things, right? Or settings. Let's see if you can remember what are those settings that you need actually in a domain backup domain controller to be able to work as a backup. Yes, can someone tell me? Anyone? I specifically mentioned, that these things should be there for the backup controller to work actually as a backup. Yes, can someone tell me what those are? Anyone? No one can remember. So I even showed you today, right? So no one remembers. So, okay, then, yes, actually one is the global catalog. So what are the other things that should be there? Yes, anyone?
System catalog.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
System catalog.
No, global catalog. I just said, what are the other things that should be needed to function as a backup domain controller? Yes, anyone? අදත් ඒ ටික පෙන්නවා. What is the other thing that is needed for the domain controller to function?
domain controller එකක් තියෙනවා.
You need the DNS server also, right? So DNS server and global catalog both needed for the backup domain controller to function in case the primary fails, right? If you don't have those options in the backup domain controller, then it will not work, right? You have a backup of the active directory and all that, but it will not function, right? The users will not be able to log in if it doesn't have the DNS server and the global catalog function, right? So this is where the domain policies are stored, right? The files. So these are all files, right? So whatever the settings you put, using these tools, they will be saved in, some files in some locations, standard locations or paths like this, right? Right. So you can do something like this also. Having a centralized kind of group policy or administrative templates, right? Where you don't have to actually keep these copied in, every server or domain controller. So you can have one copy, or you can have centralized location to have these the administrative templates. So if they are stored centrally, that means they don't have to be replicated to the sysvol volumes of domain controllers. So if they are in a central location, you don't have to actually have these templates or policies in the separately in the domain controllers. Right? You don't have to sync and so yeah, so that is because the domain policies and everything. So they are stored in this path in every domain controller, right? So any policy change you do in one server will be copied to the other servers, right? Which is the same domain. So the domain policies, the files which are here in this folder will need to be updated or synchronized in every domain server. So if you have in a central place, then you don't actually have to do that, right? You don't have to keep in synchronization these domain policies. Just update that central location with your group policies, and then that's it, right? Yeah, so it prevents maintaining multiple copies of the same data. So you don't have to have multiple copies of the same group policy in all the servers, domain servers. You can actually have one copy in a central place. Yeah, so this I showed you, right? Group policy management console. That is where you actually edit group policy. Yeah, so you can use the MMC to create this group policy management console also. I showed you that also earlier when I showed you how to create the schema management console, right? Yeah, so group policy management console and group policy management editor, right? So this is the group policy manage. Okay. Okay. Okay, there is something. Let me open again. Okay. I don't know why this is coming, but okay. So this is group policy management console, and this is the editor. You can see the window title also, right? Group policy management editor, and this is just group policy management. So in the editor, we actually edit here management. We just manage the group policies, right? Where we apply to which OU, right? And so on. So the group policy editor, it enables you to change the group policies, right? Management, by using management, you can actually apply this group policy to objects. Yeah, so if it is not already installed, you can install by clicking the checkbox. Right, so I showed you some of these examples. Right, so here you see all the group policy objects which are created in this group policy objects folder, right? Yeah, so this is how you create a new GPO. I showed you these things, right? Yeah, so you can see some examples here. So sales, different like a department, and yeah. So inside sales, there's this inside outside where, yeah, so this can change, you know, this setup can change according to the organization, right? If it is a university, it's different. Then if it is, you know, some financial organization, then it will be different. Then some other organization, you know, the structure will be different, right? Maybe there might be multinational where the organization is in several countries. Then you might have to, you know, have separate groups like this, you know, Chicago, New York. Yeah, so that those are actually it's inside the same country, right? So different locations inside the same country also you can have. So it depends on the organization. Yeah, so right, so we will stop for today. So anything you want to ask with what we did today? So when this talking about servers and everything, yeah, so you should know how to install Windows Server, then how to add as a domain controller. Plus group policy also you should have an idea, right? Because the domain or Active Directory, it's actually useless without these group policies. Group policies is the main thing which is there when we are maintaining this domain controllers or servers, right? So yeah, so because we are using these domain controllers to, you know, manage in a better way or administrate in a better way, easy way, right? When we have a lot of users, yeah, so, you know, we need to make sure that the people who are using this system or this domain, right? That they should have only the required, whatever the minimum required features. That is how it is recommended. So you always give the minimum required permissions for the users. So when you maintain like that, it is very easy to maintain the system and make sure that everyone can use the system, right? So otherwise, if we don't properly put these group policies, people can misuse the resources or or the system. So this group policy, how to create, assign, things like that. That is also very important in when you are handling this domain servers, right? And yeah, there are rules to sometimes it takes a bit of time to apply this group policies. So there are certain configurations where you can force the group policy, right, to the users. So due to network issues, maybe network slow or busy, or things like that can happen. So these group policies might get delayed to apply to the users or computers, right? So then there are options to force this. So it depends on the situation, right, according to the requirement. If it is very critical that the group policies should be applied, then we have to force it. Otherwise, it's usually group policies automatically applied in the background, right, to the users or computers. That is how it usually happens. Okay, so any questions? There was a connection interruption. So okay, have a great day, everyone, and stay safe.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.